Right. So in today's session, we are going to basically rebuild this hierarchy view that's a geographic hierarchy. So at the very bottom level, we have the county and the latitude and longitude of each county. And then the level up is each state, where we're looking at the aggregation of each state, and then aggregating each region, and then the whole country. And so in one view, we basically see this like series of tents almost making up basically different levels of aggregation. And that's the main thing to emphasize here, and sort of zooming things up, is that you can start to layer in or zoom in by adding more and more height. And so you can start to look at closer levels. And so here we're expanding out the state level, and now we can see more distinction within the county level. Whereas the US and region is like way too tall to really compare and see. So this idea that you can sort of zoom in to more specific details is something I think is very powerful. So this last step was actually drilling into specifically the state of Kansas, where we were looking at basically the childcare desert, or more or less what it's called. So we're going to recreate a little bit of this because this original flow was built before we had snapshots. And so this was actually sort of one of the last projects that was sort of a test case of how we build hierarchies and use snapshots. And so let me go ahead and start to do that. So I'm going to close this guy, and I'm going to start a new flow. Cool. So here we are in a new flow. I'm going to first upload the data set, which I downloaded from the original data set. It's just called, this name doesn't really make sense, but I will reference it in the video we upload so that people have access to it. But basically, it's the same data as what's in the Kansas data set, where we can see the different counties, regions, states, basically all the descriptors. So each county is represented as the lowest unit of measure. We can see the population, latitude, longitude, blah, 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 continued on and on for these different attributes. And there's actually quite a lot of attributes in here that you can explore and start to graph. But the way we set it up is very much the same, where we need to define basically the hierarchy. So what's the top level? The top level is country. And following country, we will have region as the next hierarchy level, then state, and then county as the lowest unit of measure. And what we'll want to do is we need to basically tell it what to do at the higher levels. And the trick here to get it to look sort of like a tent is to average the latitude and longitude, so that at the different levels, it's always going to the center of the distributed latitude and longitude of each county. And so let me do that for the longitude as well. And the last thing, I'll just keep it simpler here as opposed to doing sort of these other components, one that we can all understand, just population. And so for no filter, for this one, I got to click here. So this was on the filter tab, but I need to actually click on this tab. And for this aggregation, I am going to do the sum of population. So basically every county is then getting tallied for every state, and then that's getting tallied to every region, which is then getting tallied to the overall nation. So that's sort of where we're at. There's more we could do in terms of formatting the data to actually make this a little bit more understandable in terms of some of these numbers. So like population as an example, I probably want to, I'm going to put this in millions. Yeah, and precision wise, I can keep it in just millions. We don't need to get too crazy here. So the last step, which is probably the most important step, is to click create snapshot. So if you don't click create snapshot, you won't save all of these changes that you did. So that's sort of an important attribute here. But basically, we've set up the data now. So if what we do is go to snapshots and select that snapshot that we just created, we can now start to put this together. And so the thing that's new, or the thing that's in here to look at, is we're going to basically create a plot on a map. So we're going to add a map in, and I'll keep it as a globe since I'm using latitude and longitude. So on the snapshot itself, on the swarm snapshot, I'll go ahead and map this based on coordinates using map 1, and then using the latitude and the longitude that are both calculated fields. If you remember, latitude and longitude are calculated as averages here in our snapshots. And so if we look at this data, we can see things are plotted on the map, but they are all sort of on top of one another. And so the area, and this is actually relevant to some of what I was planning to cover today anyways, which is to go into additional dimensions, that things are now on the map, but if we actually want them to come off of it, we need to actually have it offset. And so we're going to move this is distance away from the map using height. And we are going to look at population, which was that first characteristic that we were tallying up. And so I'm going to go from 0 to 1 meter. You'll notice that it was 0.01, which is quite small. And now we're starting to see some dots come out of here. Let me actually make this like 3 so we can really be dramatic here. And the thing we'll want to add in is on the colors. We're going to use a color scheme that's looking at the different hierarchy levels, so that each level of the hierarchy is a different color, because each level is, county, then state, then region, and then nation. And so to make this a little bit more understandable and to build these, connection lines, what we'll want to do is first create connections that go to the map. And so by clicking on connections, we can do this 2 axes or map, which will basically create the solid connection lines that look basically like the bars or the tent poles. And I'm actually going to make the map like bigger. I'm going to make it 1.5 meters in radius, so 3 meter wide globe. And that will just help space things out so we can see them a bit more clearly. And so even though these look like dots, the yellow, they do have a height off of this that's equivalent to population for each county. So from here, what we'll want to do is add one more connection. And this connection, we are going to click on based on hierarchy level. And what this does is takes each hierarchy level and connects it to the next node in the graph. And so you're seeing yellow as the county level, pink as the state level, orange as the region, and then way up here is the total amount for the nation. And just to, as a design thing, or, at least for what I think works, having this be a little bit more transparent. So maybe like 40% allows you to see through it to the other counties, but still be able to see the tent-like structure. So this is obviously very subjective, and you might want to play around with it, especially if you're going into AR or VR to present it. So anyways, that's basically rebuilding it. Just maybe one last thing to top this thing off is to add some labels so we can understand a little more clearly. And I could put in population here. Right now it's showing a random subset that's pretty much all down here. But maybe what I want to do is just label some of the top levels and skip all the counties. So to do that, I'm going to add a condition where I want to say when the value of the hierarchy level is greater than 1, greater than 2, greater than 3, no. Trying to get to, oh, maybe it's the opposite direction, is less. Okay, so I was going the wrong direction. So level 1 is the largest one here, or the top of the hierarchy, and then level, I guess 4 is the county level. So now that I have saying less than 4, this number is equivalent to the total population, and we can also add in the rounding here so that it's a little more legible. So there we go, 60 million, 70, 80, and we can see the numbers down here as well in that same format. I'll go like that. So yeah, there we go. So that is basically how to build a hierarchy, or sort of this tent pole view where we're creating snapshots to build the hierarchy. And then we're using the geospatial representation to look at different layers of the cake. I think one last thing that it was in the original that's is also sort of a smaller design feature that you may not have even noticed, is that on the dot size, we can change this from fixed to scale. And we can scale this based on the population, so that we look at that same attribute, but let's make it a little smaller on the small side and then a little larger, or much larger on the big side, actually much larger. I'm going to click 80. And so that way we're seeing a big dot up here as it all adds up and smaller dots down there. And the reason I'm doing that is because that center drop line that I have for each of these, I want to be a variable width line. So if I click on that connection, instead of having it be fixed in thickness, instead I can match dot size. And so now these lines are a little bit more indicative of sort of a larger pole holding it up, et cetera. And you can play with the multipliers and sort of the attributes to your heart's content to get it in a more meaningful state. But yeah, that's a quick tutorial on building these hierarchies. And just as a reminder, this is population in the United States. So I will stop here.